welcome to our deep dive into ancient mysteries. Wow, you guys sent over a ton of articles and notes on ancient civilizations and advanced technology. Looks like we're going to be busy today.
Yeah, definitely. The material you've shared shows that people are really interested in whether those history books are really telling the whole story,
Right.
People are looking for evidence of civilizations that maybe even had technology that predates what's commonly accepted.
Yeah, like stuff that's even older than what we thought, right?
Exactly.
We're talking about ancient Egypt, those crazy pyramids.
Yeah.
Even a potential lost city in Turkey. And some really, really interesting theories about where humans even came from.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's jump right in. First up is Göbekli Tepe
Yeah.
and Karahan Tepe in Turkey.
Okay.
Now, I was reading that Göbekli Tepe is dated to something like 9500 BC. That's like
Yeah.
way older than what we usually think of as the start of
Right.
complex societies,
Yeah, that's right.
like people living in cities and stuff.
Yeah. And Karahan Tepe, which is nearby, might even be older.
Oh, wow.
Both sites have these massive T-shaped pillars, some of them way over 20 tons.
20 tons.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they have these really intricate carvings of animals and symbols.
I've seen pictures. It's pretty wild.
What's really interesting here is that the scale of these places suggests a level of organization and specialized skills that we just don't normally think about with hunter-gatherer societies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because if they're just like wandering around,
Yeah.
hunting and gathering, you wouldn't think that they would have
Right, exactly.
the time
These resources or the time.
to build something like that. And then the skill.
The know-how.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable.
It's hard to imagine them like quarrying and moving those pillars.
Yeah, like how do you even do that?
With only basic tools, it just doesn't,
It doesn't make sense.
it doesn't add up.
It would take in some serious planning and teamwork to make that happen.
Definitely.
And at Karahan Tepe. There's even evidence of potential dwellings, which suggests they might have actually had permanent settlements there.
So not just like a ceremonial site, but like people actually like
Yeah, maybe living there.
live there.
So it's making archaeologists rethink the traditional idea that everyone was just nomadic back then.
Right. So these Turkish sites are basically like shaking up what we thought we knew about like the timeline of civilization.
Exactly.
And it really makes you wonder, like,
Yeah.
if they could build these huge structures, what else could they have done? Like, what else were they capable of?
It's the big question, isn't it? It really opens up the door to exploring other examples of potential advanced tech in ancient cultures.
Okay, well, let's go there. Let's talk about the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt.
Okay, the pyramids.
Oh man, the pyramid.
Everyone loves the pyramids.
I've got to admit, I'm a little bit obsessed with them.
Yeah,
They just like scream ancient mystery.
totally.
So what's new? What did you find out about the pyramids?
Well, the Scan Pyramids project
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
used all kinds of high-tech tools to examine the Great Pyramid.
Oh, man.
And guess what they found? A big void inside.
No way. Like a hidden chamber.
It could be, yeah.
Oh man. I wonder if they'll ever be able to explore that space.
Hopefully.
And what do you think they might find in there?
Who knows? It's a total mystery, but it definitely adds to the whole, mystique of the pyramids.
For sure.
But what's even more interesting is this theory that the pyramid's dimensions are based on some incredibly precise calculations. Like, it reflects the Earth's curvature.
Really?
Yeah,
So they knew like the shape of the earth back then.
that's what it suggests.
That's crazy. It
Oh,
just
it's mind-boggling.
makes you wonder how they even
Right.
figured that out. Like what kind of math were they using?
It suggests a level of mathematical and astronomical knowledge that's just, way beyond what we usually think they had.
Right. Like it just
It doesn't fit with the traditional narrative.
Yeah. Okay, so then how do they actually do it? Like to build a pyramid like that? Yeah. Makes you wonder if the ancient Egyptians, even the pharaohs, all those dynasties and everything.
Or the people in charge.
Yeah, if they really had the technology to build something that huge using just basic tools and methods.
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
There's this theory called a tale of two industries,
Okay.
which proposes that there were actually two distinct levels of craftsmanship in ancient Egypt.
Two industries.
Yeah, so basically,
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
so alongside the more basic tools and techniques,
Uh-huh.
there's also evidence of extremely precise craftsmanship that just seems like beyond what we think they were capable of.
So like two totally different skill sets.
Yeah, almost like
Oh.
two different groups of people working on things.
Okay, so what kind of evidence is there for this?
Well, for example, you find these beautifully polished granite boxes, right?
Yeah.
But then they're inscribed with hieroglyphics that look almost like crudely carved in comparison.
Huh. Interesting.
Or you have perfectly symmetrical statues, but the inscriptions on them seem kind of hastily etched.
It's like someone with like super advanced tools made the thing.
Right.
And then someone else came along later and added the writing with much simpler techniques.
That's the idea.
That's making me think of those mystery novels
Uh-huh.
where there's like a hidden message or something.
Yeah, like a secret code.
Yeah.
It's a really compelling idea, and if that's true,
Then what?
it could mean that the hieroglyphics, which we use to date things, right?
Uh-huh.
They might actually be later additions to much older artifacts.
Whoa. So like the writing doesn't actually tell us how old the object itself is?
Potentially not.
Wow. That's kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
This could totally change your understanding of the timeline of ancient Egypt.
Yeah. If the inscriptions are like misleading,
Exactly.
it makes all those examples of advanced machining we were talking about
Right.
even more interesting.
Even more mysterious.
So what did you find out about those?
Well, let's start with the unfinished obelisk at the Aswan Quarry.
Oh, yeah. I've seen pictures of that. It's huge.
It's massive, and it's still attached to the bedrock, right? But it has these weird scoop marks on it.
Scoop marks?
Yeah, like someone took a giant ice cream scoop to the granite.
What? What could even make a mark like that?
That's the question. The marks are too big and too evenly spaced to have been made with the pounding stones that we usually think the Egyptians used.
So it's not just like they were hitting it with a hammer or something.
No, it's something much more like,
Powerful.
yeah, precise and powerful.
Okay.
It really makes you wonder what they were using.
What kind of tool could do that?
It really challenges what we thought we knew.
It implies they were using something way more advanced than what we give them credit for.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these scoop marks.
Uh-huh.
What else?
There's more.
Okay.
There's a core sample that was taken from a tube drill hole.
A core sample.
Yeah, like they drilled into the stone and took out a little cylinder of it. Okay.
And this core sample shows a perfect spiral groove.
Oh.
And get this. The rate of penetration needed to create that groove would have been 500 times greater than what modern tools can do.
500 times. How do they even know that? Like, what kind of analysis was done?
They looked at it under a microscope, they measured it all really carefully,
Okay.
and then they compared it to what modern drilling tech can do.
So, like, they're pretty sure about that number, huh?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Wow, that's just, like...
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is. It's like...
Lost technology.
Yeah. Maybe even something that we don't even understand today.
It's possible.
Okay, and this isn't just at one site, right?
No, there are other examples, too.
Okay, like what?
Like the perfectly flat basalt pavement east of the Great Pyramid.
I think I've seen that.
It's huge and perfectly flat, and some researchers think it could only have been made with giant circular saws.
Giant saws.
I mentioned that.
Like, what would even power a saw like that?
It's a good question. Okay, so we've got these scoop marks, these super precise drill holes, and this perfectly flat pavement.
Yeah.
It definitely sounds like we're dealing with something way more advanced than just, copper chisels and hammers.
Absolutely.
So what are, like, the alternative theories? Like, how do they explain this level of precision?
Well, some researchers are looking into technologies beyond diamond drills,
Okay, like what?
like ultrasonics.
Ultrasonics?
Yeah, which we use today to erode hard materials.
Oh, so like sound waves.
Yeah, kind of.
That's wild.
And some are even looking into the possibility that they could, like, manipulate the molecular properties of the stone.
Like soften the stone at a molecular level?
That's the idea. Yeah.
It's like something out of science fiction.
I know, right? But if ancient civilizations did have that kind of technology, where did it go?
That's a good question. Like, why haven't we found more evidence of it?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest mysteries, and there are a lot of theories out there.
No real answers.
Not yet, at least.
Well, this is all really making me think, but I think we need to shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about something a little smaller, but equally mysterious. Pre-dynastic vases.
The vases.
Those things are incredible. Like, from what I've read, they're made with this, like, crazy level of precision
Yeah.
and symmetry.
It's mind-boggling.
It's almost impossible to believe that they could have done that without some kind of advanced technology.
Especially working with such hard materials. Like, how
Yeah.
do you even do that?
It's like they were trying to communicate something through the very design of these objects,
Yeah, like a message from the past.
Yeah. What have you learned about them?
So pre-dynastic hard stone vases are really something else.
Okay.
Recent studies using really advanced scanning technology
Mm-hmm.
have revealed incredible details about how they were made.
Like what?
We're talking about tolerances that are so fine, they're almost impossible to replicate even with our tools today.
Like, give me a sense of scale. How precise are we talking?
Okay, imagine an inch divided into 1,000 tiny pieces.
Okay, tiny.
The cylindrical sections of these vases are within 13 thousandths of an inch of being perfectly cylindrical.
Whoa. And that's like consistent across the whole vase.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's wild.
And the spherical sections, like the round parts, they have a center point that's only 17 thousandths of an inch off the central axis of the whole vase.
So basically, they're almost perfectly round.
Exactly.
And that's not just random luck, right?
Well,
Like, they meant to do that.
there had to be a reason for that level of precision.
Definitely.
And it goes beyond just the individual surfaces. The mathematical relationships between the different parts of the vase are, incredibly complex.
Right.
Everything is perfectly aligned and scaled in relation to each other.
You mentioned sacred geometry earlier.
Yeah.
Is that what we're seeing here? Like, encoded in these vases?
There's definitely evidence of that. The vase's design uses the golden ratio.
Golden ratio.
Yeah. It's a mathematical constant that's found all over in nature.
Oh, yeah. Part of that.
And it's not just about aesthetics. The golden ratio has been used in art and architecture for centuries.
Yeah.
And some people believe it represents, harmony and balance.
So they were putting this, advanced mathematical knowledge into these vases on purpose.
Seems like it.
But why? What were they trying to say?
That's what researchers are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Some think they were showing off their skills, leaving behind a message about how advanced their civilization was.
Like, look what we can do.
Exactly.
Okay, I could see that.
Others think they might have been encoding specific information.
Like secret knowledge.
Yeah, maybe about their beliefs, their technology, or even their understanding of the universe.
Wow. Like a message in a bottle, but it's a vase.
Yeah, a message through time.
What other mathematical stuff did they find in these vases?
Well, another really interesting thing is that there might be a base radian system encoded in the design.
A base radian system.
Yeah, you know how we use a base 10 system?
Right, like we count in tens.
Exactly. But a base radian system uses radians, which is a way of measuring angles.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm following.
So imagine a circle, and instead of dividing it into 360 degrees, you divide it based on the relationship between the circle's radius and its circumference.
Okay, kind of get it.
It's a different way of looking at angles.
So they were using a totally different system of math
It seems that way.
based on circles and angles.
Yeah, which suggests a really sophisticated understanding of geometry and trigonometry.
Stuff that we don't usually think ancient cultures knew about.
Right.
So it really makes you think about what they were capable of.
Absolutely.
Okay, but how did they actually make these things? Like, with that level of precision?
That's a question that has a lot of researchers scratching their heads.
Yeah, because the traditional explanation of copper tools and sand,
Right, just rubbing it down with sand.
it just doesn't explain the level of detail and the precision that we're seeing.
Especially with such hard materials.
Yeah, what are some of the ideas out there?
Some people think they must have had some kind of lost technology that could shape hard materials really accurately and quickly.
Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Did they have tiny lasers or something?
Well, we haven't found any evidence of lasers.
Okay.
But the theories range from advanced machining techniques to using sonic or vibrational tools that could somehow soften or manipulate the stone.
Sonic tools. Like using sound waves to shape stone.
Yeah, it sounds crazy.
But it does sound crazy.
There are people who think it might be possible.
Okay, so we've got these massive structures in Turkey that are like way older than we thought. These incredible examples of machining in Egypt.
Yeah.
And these vases that seem to be like encoded with all this mathematical knowledge.
It's almost like we're seeing a totally different history than what we were taught.
Yeah, like a history where technology and knowledge were way more advanced than we ever imagined.
It's a fascinating possibility.
But if that's the case, what happened to it all?
That's the big question, isn't it? Like, why did all this advanced knowledge seem to just disappear?
It's like, was it a gradual thing or did something happen?
There are a lot of theories out there, but nobody really knows for sure.
It's both fascinating and kind of frustrating to think about.
I know, right?
Like all this knowledge is just gone.
Lost to time.
Yeah. But maybe with more research and exploration, we can find more clues and piece together a more complete picture of what really happened in the past.
I hope so.
Me too.
Yeah.
This has been really thought-provoking.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Welcome back to our deep dive. Before the break, we were just talking about those pre-dynastic vases
Yeah.
and their incredible precision. Just like,
Yeah.
it's mind-blowing how they could have achieved that level of craftsmanship,
Yeah.
especially when you compare it to those big examples of advanced machining we were talking about earlier. Like,
It's definitely a puzzle,
Yeah.
and it really highlights the inconsistencies that we see in the archaeological record.
right, like it's not all neat and tidy.
Not at all.
It doesn't all fit together perfectly.
Like those scoop marks at the Aswan quarry, those are still a big mystery.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of debate about how they were made.
Yeah, because some people say they could have been made with pounding stones.
Right, just people hammering away at it.
But other people are like, no way, that's not possible.
It's just not plausible.
I got to admit, when I first saw pictures of those scoop marks,
Yeah.
like my brain just couldn't comprehend how they could have done that with such simple tools,
Right.
We're talking about these massive, like evenly spaced depressions in solid granite.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
The scale and the consistency of those marks just don't match up with what we know about the tools they were supposed to have.
Yeah, and it's not even just about the effort, it's the precision too.
Exactly. Like, how do you get that level of precision with just a hammer and a chisel?
So if pounding stones aren't the answer, what are the other theories? Like, what kind of lost technology could they have used to do that?
Well, some researchers think that maybe the ancient Egyptians had some kind of technology that we've just, like, lost something that allowed them to shape granite in a way that we don't even understand today.
So we're not talking about, like, a slightly better chisel or, like, a stronger hammer.
No.
We're talking about something completely different.
Completely different, yeah.
Whole other approach to working with stone.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm listening. What are they thinking?
Well, some people speculate about ultrasonics, which is something we use today,
Okay.
to erode hard materials.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine a tool that vibrates at a frequency that weakens the bonds in the granite.
Okay.
It makes it easier to remove material.
So, like, sound waves.
Yeah, kind of like that.
That's really interesting. But if they had these ultrasonic
Yeah.
tools or whatever, wouldn't we have found some evidence of them? Like, even just a little piece.
Well, yeah, ideally we would have.
It's a good point.
But we're talking about a civilization that existed thousands of years ago.
Right.
Like, think about all the stuff that we lose or misplace in our own lifetimes. Now imagine trying to find something that's been buried for thousands of years.
It's true. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then on top of that, you've got erosion and natural disasters and all kinds of stuff that could destroy or bury evidence.
Exactly.
Okay, so what about those super precise drill holes we talked about earlier? The ones with the spiral grooves that suggest, like, an insane penetration rate.
Oh, yeah, those are a real head scratcher.
500 times greater than modern tools. It's just like, how is that even possible?
I know, it's mind-boggling.
And again, the traditional explanation of copper tools and sand just doesn't cut it.
Nope, not even close.
Like, you're telling me they just rubbed sand on it for, like, hundreds of years until they got a hole?
It would have taken an astronomical amount of time and effort to do it that way.
It's like they had some kind of power drill that just sliced through granite like butter.
Right. It makes you wonder.
What are some of the ideas that researchers have come up with to explain this?
Well, some people think that maybe they used some kind of advanced drilling technique that we don't know about.
Okay.
Like maybe they had some kind of alloy that was harder and more durable than copper.
So like a super metal.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting.
There's also the idea that maybe they understood how to use resonant frequencies to weaken the stone.
Resonant frequencies.
Yeah, like sound waves again.
Oh, wow. So they could, like, vibrate the stone at a certain frequency and make it easier to drill through?
That's the idea.
That sounds pretty high-tech.
It does, doesn't it? But think about it.
Yeah.
We use sound waves for all sorts of things today, like in medical imaging and even cleaning stuff.
That's true.
So it's not totally crazy to think that an ancient civilization could figure out how to use sound for their own purposes.
It makes you wonder if we've lost touch with some of that ancient knowledge, Like, maybe they had a deeper understanding of nature and how to work with it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot we can learn from the past.
Okay, so we've talked about these mysterious scoop marks and drill holes. But what about the statues? Like those incredible statues that the ancient Egyptians were so famous for.
Oh yeah, the statues are amazing.
They're huge, they're detailed, and they're just like another piece of this puzzle.
Definitely.
So how do researchers explain those statues? Like, how do they make them with the tools they supposedly had?
Well, the standard explanation is copper chisels, pounding stones, and a whole lot of manpower.
Okay, but when you see these things in person or even just in pictures, it's like that can't be the whole story.
Yeah, it starts to fall apart when you consider the scale and complexity of some of these statues.
Right, like the amount of detail.
The precision, the
Yeah.
sheer size of them.
Like take the statues of Ramses II at the Ramesseum, for example.
Yeah, those are massive.
They're colossal, carved from single blocks of granite,
And they weigh hundreds of tons.
hundreds of tons, and they're over 60 feet tall.
It's mind-boggling.
It's hard to even imagine how they moved those blocks, let alone carve them into these intricate shapes.
I know, right? Like, even with modern technology, it would be a huge undertaking.
So are we saying that they use some kind of advanced machinery to make the statues too?
Some researchers think it's a possibility.
Okay, what kind of machinery are we talking about?
Well, some people suggest that maybe they had ways of softening the stone or manipulating it somehow.
Okay.
Like maybe they knew how to use heat or chemicals or even some natural process that we haven't rediscovered yet.
So it's not just about the tools themselves, it's about understanding the materials on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Like maybe they had a knowledge of chemistry or physics that we're only just starting to rediscover.
It's definitely possible.
Okay, that's interesting.
Others think they might have used some kind of advanced cutting or grinding tools,
Okay.
maybe powered by water or wind.
Like ancient power tools.
Kind of, yeah.
Wow.
There are these tool marks on some of the statues that are really hard to explain with the traditional methods.
It's almost like we're looking at two different timelines, like layered on top of each other. One timeline where they had primitive tools and techniques,
Right.
and then another one where they had this like super advanced technology that we don't even understand.
It's like that with those granite boxes we talked about.
Right, with the precise craftsmanship and then the crude inscriptions.
Exactly. It's like two different civilizations.
Or maybe it's the same civilization but at different points in time.
Yeah, that's what the Tale of Two Industries theory is all about.
Right.
It suggests that there might have been a time in ancient Egypt when they had this advanced technology,
Okay.
but then for some reason, they lost it.
Or forgot about it.
Or maybe it was suppressed somehow.
Ooh, interesting.
It's a mystery.
It's like, what happened? Where did all that knowledge go?
It's one of the biggest questions in archaeology.
It's like we're detectives trying to solve a cold case.
Yeah.
But instead of a crime scene, we're investigating the origins of civilization.
And it seems like every clue we find just leads to more questions.
It's a wild ride for sure.
But it's a fascinating one.
Definitely. Okay, so we've talked about those mysterious scoop marks, the drill holes, the statues. What about those vases? Like those pre-dynastic vases?
Yes.
They're not just beautiful objects, they're like time capsules.
Yeah, with all this information encoded in them.
And we were talking earlier about how incredibly precise they are and all the mathematical stuff, like the golden ratio and the potential base radian system.
Right.
It's almost like they were designed to send a message across time, you know?
Like they knew that their civilization might one day be forgotten.
Yeah, and they wanted to leave something behind.
A testament to their knowledge.
But why do it in such a subtle way? Like, why not just write it down plainly?
That's a good question.
What are some of the theories about that?
Well, some people think that maybe they believe that true knowledge should be earned.
Okay,
Like you have to work for it.
so it's not just handed to you.
Right, you have to search for it, decipher it.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they wanted to challenge future generations to rediscover the secrets of the past.
Like they set up a giant scavenger hunt with clues scattered throughout history.
I like that analogy.
And maybe we're just starting to find those clues.
Yeah, with the help of modern technology.
Like 3D scanning and computer modeling.
Exactly.
We can analyze these ancient artifacts in ways that they never could have imagined.
And we're starting to see things that were hidden before.
It's exciting to think about what we might discover in the future.
Definitely.
Okay, but let's be real for a second.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of skepticism around these theories.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who don't buy it.
And that's okay, right? Like, it's good to question things, to be skeptical.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is essential.
So let's talk about that skepticism for a minute.
Okay.
We talked about the lack of direct evidence, like tools or machines. But even if we don't have those physical objects, couldn't there be other kinds of evidence that support these theories?
Yeah. Proponents of these theories point to the fact that there are certain anomalies that keep popping up across different cultures and time periods.
Okay, like what?
Like the precision and scale of ancient structures, the mathematical knowledge that's encoded in some artifacts,
Okay.
and the hints of lost technologies that we see.
Right.
They say that these recurring themes suggest that there's a deeper connection, a shared knowledge that was more widespread than we realize.
So it's like finding similar patterns in different parts of a puzzle,
Exactly.
even if we don't have all the pieces yet.
Right.
It makes you wonder if those patterns are pointing to a bigger picture that we're just starting to glimpse.
That's the idea.
But some people might say it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, or that we're misinterpreting the evidence.
So how do proponents of these theories respond to that?
Well, they argue that while individual instances might be open to interpretation, the sheer number and consistency of these anomalies across different cultures makes it less likely that it's just a coincidence.
That's a good point.
They say that a more plausible explanation is that there was some kind of transfer of knowledge,
Okay.
a shared understanding of certain principles and techniques that spread across the ancient world.
So not necessarily a single global civilization, but maybe like interconnected pockets of knowledge that kind of spread and evolved over time. Like how different cultures today might share certain mathematical concepts or architectural principles, even if they develop those things independently.
Right.
But if that's the case, why did so much of this knowledge seem to disappear?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, like what happened?
There are tons of theories out there,
Okay.
ranging from natural disasters that wiped out entire civilizations
Okay.
to societal upheavals that led to the loss of knowledge and skills.
Right.
Some people even speculate about deliberate suppression of knowledge by those in power.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, like maybe they didn't want the common people to have access to certain information.
Like a conspiracy theory?
Kind of, yeah.
It's like a historical game of telephone where information gets distorted or lost as it's passed down through generations.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe it's more like a library where some of the books have been damaged or destroyed.
I like that analogy.
So we're left with these gaps in our understanding.
Exactly.
And we may never have all the answers.
Probably not.
But the search itself is fascinating.
Absolutely.
Like every new discovery, every new interpretation adds another piece to the puzzle.
It's like a never-ending mystery.
And it brings us closer to a more complete understanding of our past.
Hopefully.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been talking about a lot of really mind-blowing stuff today, like, those massive temples in Turkey, those super precise vases in Egypt, all this stuff that kind of makes you question what you learned in history class.
Yeah, it definitely challenges some of the traditional narratives.
Right. And before the break, we were talking about, like, all the skepticism that surrounds these, these kind of alternative theories about ancient civilizations.
The skeptics are definitely out there.
But it's a good thing to have that kind of debate, right? Like to challenge ideas and look at things from different angles. That's how we learn.
Absolutely. Skepticism and critical analysis are crucial in any field of study.
Especially when you're dealing with, like, limited evidence and trying to interpret the past.
It's not always clear-cut.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. We talk about the lack of direct evidence, like, finding the actual tools or machines that they supposedly used.
Right, like if they had all this advanced technology, where's the proof?
Yeah, exactly. But even if we don't have those physical objects, couldn't there be other forms of evidence that kind of back up these theories?
That's what proponents of these theories argue. They're trying to put together a bigger picture, and they point to things like the consistency of certain anomalies across different cultures.
Okay, so like similar weird stuff happening in different parts of the world.
Yeah, and at different points in time.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, like we talked about, the precision and scale of some of those ancient structures.
Mm-hmm.
The mathematical knowledge that seems to be encoded in certain artifacts.
Wow.
And all those hints of lost technologies that we see.
So like recurring themes that kind of suggest there might be a deeper connection there?
Exactly, like maybe a shared knowledge that was way more widespread than we think.
It's like finding similar patterns in different parts of a puzzle, even if we're still missing some pieces.
Right, it makes you wonder if those patterns are pointing to something bigger.
But couldn't that just be a coincidence? Like maybe those cultures just happened to figure out similar things on their own?
Some people would say that, but proponents of these theories argue that the sheer number and consistency of these anomalies makes it less likely to be just a coincidence.
That makes sense.
They suggest that it's more likely that there was some kind of transfer of knowledge,
Okay.
a shared understanding of certain principles that influenced these civilizations.
So maybe not necessarily a single global civilization, but more like, different pockets of knowledge that were connected in some way.
Right, and those pockets of knowledge spread and evolved over time.
Like how different cultures today might share certain mathematical concepts or architectural styles,
Exactly.
even if they develop those things independently. But then if that's the case, why did so much of this knowledge seem to just vanish?
That's a question that has baffled people for centuries.
Like, what happened?
There are a lot of theories out there, natural disasters, societal upheavals.
Yeah.
Even some people think that maybe knowledge was deliberately suppressed by those in power.
Ooh, like a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's an intriguing possibility.
It's like all that knowledge is just lost.
Lost to time.
Maybe it's like a giant library where some of the books have been destroyed and we're just left with these fragments.
And we're trying to piece together the story from what's left.
Well, we've definitely explored some pretty interesting fragments in this deep dive. Like, it seems like every time we turn over a rock, more questions pop up.
Yeah, it's a never-ending journey of discovery.
But that's what makes it so fascinating, right?
Absolutely.
So after all this, what's the main thing you'd want our listener to take away from this deep dive?
I think the most important thing is to keep an open mind, Don't be afraid to question what you think you know about the past.
Be open to new ideas.
Exactly, because the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know.
It's humbling, for sure.
Embrace that mystery, that sense of wonder, and let it fuel your curiosity.
Beautifully said. And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has sparked your imagination and maybe inspired you to do a little digging of your own.
There's a whole world of ancient mysteries out there waiting to be explored.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and who knows what incredible discoveries you might make.
The journey is never truly over.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into ancient mysteries. We'll catch you next time.